all these people who are in denial, this could be going on for a lot longer.
Some indicators of financial stress have risen. At the same time, the valuations of some financial assets appear to have become stretched. This could increase the risk of a sharp correction that could generate system-wide stress.
Vales of Humber and Brampton, that's down 50%. You've got Winfields, Toronto, that's down 49%. That is looking at around 50% loss since 2022. The Bank of Montreal has come out with a shocking report on Canadian real estate, saying that the crash could last for several years. So let's get into exactly what they're talking about here, and then the crash that we've experienced so far. We'll get into that in just a second. So BMO sees prolonged bear market ahead for Canadian housing, and they're basically citing that real estate corrections don't just happen in months, they take several years. So we'll get into this. Despite some optimism in the industry over a modest rise in sales last month, BMO analysts warn that key market fundamentals remain weak and any real estate correction is likely to play out over several years, not months. While the Canadian Real Estate Association has noted that price declines are slowing and suggested a turnaround might be near, BMO remains cautious. Porter pointed out that the seasonally adjusted gain was offset by the fact that in unadjusted terms, sales were down 14% than the same time a year ago. And let's take a look at a chart of Canadian real estate. I like to use this chart because it goes all the way back here to the 1970s, specifically 1970, and you can see all the crashes in Canadian real estate that have happened over time. Now, what gets really interesting about this is the one we're experiencing right now is the biggest crash that Canadian real estate has ever experienced. So if we go to my tweet here, I've literally shown you that 8 years from 76 to 84, 22% correction. 9 years from 1989 to 1998 was a 21% correction. And then it was 1 year, 2008, 2009. And now basically we're already at 23.5%. Obviously this is in real terms adjusted for the CPI, which is totally fake. So obviously the Bank of Canada has pointed to this numerous times as a warning sign for the Canadian economy. The over-reliance on housing, the fact that households are so in debt even leading up to this crisis. Take a listen to this.
The pandemic, a growing number of Canadians took out mortgages that were very large relative to their incomes at variable rates with amortizations of more than 25 years. And our model suggests that the most highly indebted households saw only a small increase in their liquid assets in that time. This brings me to our second and related vulnerability, elevated house prices. Some indicators of financial stress have risen. At the same time, the valuations of some financial assets appear to have become stretched. This could increase the risk of a sharp correction that could generate system-wide stress. The recent rise in the use of leverage in non-bank financial institutions could amplify the effects of such a correction.
But still now in this situation, the Bank of Canada doesn't really know what to do because they're faced with elevated inflation and they're also faced with the collapsing economy and housing market because they feed into each other because they're so directly connected and related in Canada because the bubble economy is revolving around immigration, the housing bubble, and of course the government bubble. And two of those bubbles are in full collapse. And then if we look at some of the losses that people are taking, and we're not even talking about Toronto here, we're talking about fucking Waterloo. So, you know, this is a commuter city that people were flocking to during the pandemic. They were like, I don't want to live in that condo. We'll just rent out this condo. We'll go and buy a property out in Waterloo. And they've just been absolutely destroyed. And you can really see from people who bought at the top, they have been absolutely wiped out in certain places in Canada. So Investor Rect purchased for 1.3 million, leased for 3 years, total that they would have got from leasing it around $120,000. We're assuming that they paid the rent there. They could have not paid the rent, who knows? And then you've got all their expenses, everything else. I haven't even factored that into this. So if you just remove that $120,000, that turns their $385,000 loss into a $265,000 loss. And obviously you've got all those deductions that you have to make. And obviously people were saying back in 2020, 2021, 2022, that real estate is a real safe investment in Canada and it's never going to crash. And this has crashed in nominal terms, around 30%. But you've got to remember that nominal prices, yeah, they are great for looking at trends and observing price action. But when it actually comes to purchasing power, that is what really matters. And if you look at what people have lost, plus all the decline in money since then in their currency, that is looking at around 50% loss since 2022. So they just sold for $915,000. This person bought for $1.3 million and leased it out. They were an investor and they've been absolutely destroyed. And then this is in Milton, yet another commuter town. And Milton was another place that people were moving to from the city because they didn't want to be in the city and they wanted more space. So this person purchased for $1.51 million in 2022. They just sold for $1.07 million in 2025. So think about that. 28% loss, but $430,000 loss. I mean, who can afford to take that kind of loss? Not most Canadians. The average Canadian, by the way, has less than $30,000 saved. That is the average Canadian. And they have at least $17,000 of debt. So, what have they really got? Like $13,000 saved? How can any normal person afford to take $435,000? This could have been a power sale. Who knows? So a 28% loss there. Another victim of the Canadian housing market crash. And you just can't deny it with everything that's going on. Even Shazzy posting this: GTA neighborhoods where single family home prices have dropped the most since 2022 peak. And you can see here, Huttonville in Brampton, the price is down 53%, guys. And we haven't even adjusted that for inflation. So back in 2022, when volumes were really high, prices were at $1.76 million, and they're now down at $825,000. It's absolutely insane. You've got Rougemont in Pickering, that is down 50%. I mean, it's just crazy. Vales of Humber in Brampton, that's down 50%. You've got Winfields, Toronto, that's down 49%. Wanless Park, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, in Toronto, that's down 47%. Mignogna in Mississauga, again, probably butchering these names, that's down 46%. Northwood in Oshawa, that's down 44%. Not even going to bother with that name. In Burlington, 41%. Church Young Corridor, 40%. Westgate in Brampton, 40%. So, the fact that people are denying that there's a housing market crash going on is kind of insane to me, especially when you actually add in inflation. Now, you can certainly make the argument, though, that prices have further to fall, and that's exactly what BMO is saying here. They're basically saying that. And, we can also back that up as well, because when you look at most of the corrections that have happened in the Canadian housing market, they've lasted for way longer than 1 year. So really, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Are we in for 8-9 years of this? And you can really see how it all falls apart if that's the case, because you've got a lot of people in denial who are waiting for that market to rise right now. And now I want to take you back to 2022 here. Again, we have to go back and look at all the risky shit that was going on back then in order to think what is coming down the pipe in the future. And this was put out in September 2022. Bank of Mum and Dad increasingly turning to reverse mortgages for down payment gifts. So think about how this has ended. Most people's down payment gifts have been absolutely wiped out. It's mostly for people in these expensive areas of Canada where prices have absolutely collapsed and investors are pulling out. So according to the Toronto Real Estate rate board, gifts from family and friends accounted for 17% of down payment sources for first-time home buyers this year and 11% of all buyers in the Greater Toronto area. So that is a huge chunk. And again, it's showing the affordability crisis. So all these people without parents that can do this, they're not buying. And even the ones that did this, I mean, God, they are in a terrible situation. I mean, they're going to probably be trying to sell right now, trying to sell at a loss to pay that back. The interest payments will be eating their own home completely alive. Their equity could be gone in that because reverse mortgages are an absolute scam. Most people know that. Even over the past year, we've seen an increase of about 20% of the share of people saying that they were using the funds for a related person, which was potentially gifting or buying another property, etc. So again, you've just got a massive amount of people back in 2021, 2022, during the peak of this, who were using borrowed money from their home equity. And it's not just the fact that you've got reverse mortgages going on. You've got people using home equity lines of credit to buy a house. You've got people gaming the system. The fact that there's two credit bureaus and certain banks use certain ones. And then you've got all the fraud that was laid into this as well. Because when you think about it, a lot of these people had the mentality, well, I'm committing fraud, but Canadian house prices don't go down. They don't go down. And now look at the situation that they're in. They are down, and they are well down if you're in the Greater Toronto area. So again, it just shows what's going on there. And then obviously we've just got to think, it's coming up this week. The Bank of Canada is going to make another decision. I really don't think it matters, even if they reduce 25 basis points, if they hold rates. I mean, really, what does it matter? I would put my money on that they're probably going to hold, but who really cares at this point? The fact that everyone pins everything on central banks is just completely ludicrous. It's actually funny because the Federal Reserve, their rates have more of an impact on the Canadian bond market than the Canadian central bank. So people should really be more focused on the Fed than the Canadian central bank. But anyway, that's a topic for a different video here. But you know, it's just crazy what is going on. You have to let me know in the comments, do you think this is a crash or not? I obviously think it's a crash, but it's a lot that people are going to have to get used to. All these people who are in denial, this could be going on for a lot longer. So anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, I'd highly recommend that you check out this video here. And then if you're looking for a VPN and also want to help support the channel, get the best, fastest VPN, which is the VPN that I use, ExpressVPN, link in the description below. And I will see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.